All right, so this is problem number 76, and we're very simply asked here, what is white's best move? This one, uh, this one feels very positional to me. There's some interesting things going on. Black has two isolated pawns here and here, a backwards pawn on e6. White has one isolated pawn. Both players are in possession of three pawn islands, but I definitely feel like White's position is better structurally. Right? I also rather like that this pawn on d4 is controlling e5 and c5. I don't know. It just feels like a nice placement. Not everything is rosy though. The problem, I think, is with the minor pieces. In my opinion, the bishop on g7 is better than the bishop on b3. I mean, I think that's not really an opinion. I think it's pretty patently obvious that that's the case. And I also think the knight on d5 is better than the knight on c3. You might think that in that case you would like to trade the knight on c3 for the knight on d5, but that does help improve black's structure. So I don't know that we want to do that. There's a few forcing continuations that are hanging around here, but I think all the forcing continuations are probably going to depend on our evaluation of the position. Maybe I'm wrong about that though. Maybe we have some forcing continuations that are not positional in nature. What I'm trying to get at is that there's some possible exchanges here. Knight takes d5 is possible. d4 is hanging. Do you defend it or do you not defend it? There's also bishop takes d5 in some lines. My inclination is that I want to do something where I get my knight to d3 without losing d4. If I had my knight over one square, I'd have a huge positional bind, but I'm not seeing such things working. The reason I'm starting to wonder if there might be something tactical is that there's this move rook takes e6, because there's a latent pin here on the c file, and the d5 knight could be in trouble. If we take on e6, there's a few points. The first thing we have to consider is whether or not black can take back on e6. So we have rook takes e6, rook takes e6, and I think we then have knight takes d5. Black cannot take on d5 without losing the rook on c8, which is our big tactical issue here for black. But if black doesn't take back on d5, when the knight goes here, it's threatening the queen. And not only is it threatening the queen, we're looking at moves like knight to f4, and we just pile up on that pinned piece, that rook on e6. So rook takes e6, knight takes d5 looks really good to me. What if black doesn't take back on e6 though? If we play rook takes e6, we're letting black have d4. And in that case, you know, we're taking a weak pawn, giving up a weak pawn that's probably not as weak as the pawn on e6, I think. So rook takes e6, 2 points. First, rook takes e6, knight takes c3 is not an intermezzo, because not only do we have a discover check, we have discover check and mate with rook takes e6. So that is off the table. Rook takes e6, bishop takes d4, and queen takes d4 are on the table a little bit, but I don't think they're good. Let's take, let's see, bishop takes d4 first. Rook takes e6, bishop takes d4. We can at least win a pawn by trading rooks on e8 and then taking on d5. It's an opposite colored bishop endgame, but I do like white. I think that that is pretty good and that there are some winning chances in that endgame. I also wonder if there might be something better there, but I do think that's good enough. For instance, there is knight takes d5, which actually looks better to me after pawn takes. I think pawn takes, bishop takes looks pretty dangerous. There's just so many discovered checks and other things lurking in the position. Black has a lot of stuff hanging. I think I like that, although maybe it's not so good. But in any case, rook takes e6, bishop takes d4. Trading on e8 and taking on d5 gives at least some winning chances. There might be a crushing blow. Rook takes e6, queen takes d4, the other move. And again, I feel like we're at least doing well. Maybe we win a pawn there, but maybe not the game. So my concern is that if we have to trade queens, it could be really hard after rook takes e6 to win the game. So rook takes e6, queen takes d4, queen takes d4, bishop takes d4. And how do we win more than a pawn? You know, rook takes e6, queen takes d4, queen takes d4, bishop takes d4, knight takes d5. I'm seeing a pawn, but I'm not seeing more. Rook takes e6, queen takes d4, queen takes d4, bishop takes d4. But you know what we can do? We can at least play rook takes c6 there, which is kind of crazy. But after rook takes c6, bishop takes knight on d5 will at least guarantee us an extra pawn in a knight versus bishop endgame rather than an opposite colored bishop endgame. There might be better, but we're at least winning a pawn in all of these lines. So I think rook takes e6 wins a pawn and gives really good winning chances at a minimum. If there's more than a pawn after rook takes e6, a forced mate, I'm not going to be surprised, but I'm not going to insist on that. I'm just going to go ahead and take on e6. That's enough for me today. All right, so let's see if we have more than that. The authors say it's clear as glass. You say to yourself as you take the pawn on e6. In the game Hort Larsen, Vlastimil Hort versus Bent Larsen Lugano, 1968. I think Lugano had an Olympics one time. White had the great pleasure of playing rook takes e6, that's 4 points. Black defended stubbornly with queen takes d4, which I thought was the most resistant move. Not rook takes e6 because of knight takes d5. And then the knight is coming to f4 and winning. And then queen e2 on move 2. Rook takes e6, queen takes d4, queen e2 maintains the best winning chances. All right, let's double check that. I'm going to turn on an engine. See if Komodo fully agrees with that analysis. Rook takes e6 is the winning blow after queen takes d4. Queen e2 is by far the best move. I did not see 2 queen e2 here, which is an important part of the solution. And after 2 queen e2, black just has too many problems to deal with. There's just a lot of weaknesses. There's still pressure on the a2 to g8 diagonal. Everything is problematic, and everything is great for white. In the other lines, they're good, but they're not as good. Queen takes d4 was my move, which is second to queen e2 and a similar queen e1. bishop takes d4, and the good news for me is that rook takes c6 is the best move in this case, and that there are winning chances, but it's a slight to clear plus, not in any case a clear win. I think, yeah, that's probably the best point. There's rook e to e6 in this position, and then you can win the exchange. You don't have to win it right away because you've got a pin on the rook on e6, so you're hitting the other rook, so you're going to get the exchange no matter what. And your winning chances are good, but not incredible. It's not over, and it is over after 2 queen e2, so that is the best move. But not a bad day at the office. Spotted rook takes e6 pretty quickly, and I'm happy to spot rook takes e6 even if I don't think it's that difficult of a move, because the initial kind of quiet position could easily tune me into just staying focused on positional solutions. And so rook takes e6 is a good tactical blow in a position that looks very quiet, not too forcing. You always got to keep a sharp eye out, and here there's this nice opportunity. Boom, rook takes e6.